Hey everybody, welcome to the 1K subscriber Q&A. I put out a couple of calls for questions and here they are. Franklin Collecting asks, long-term financial outlook on 7th edition foil rares and shooting star foils in general. I think the outlook for those is better than average compared to all the rest of TCG investing opportunities. And if you focus on the very highest quality examples of them, ones that are in very good condition, and do not have oxidation problems, I think the gains on those will be even better because those early foils, one, they were very, very rare. You used to only get 2, 3, 4 foils per booster box, and then they had oxidation issues from fingerprints on them. So if you can find ones today that are in great condition and don't have those problems, they will gain value faster than the rest of them. Mango Man, longtime subscriber who comments all the time. If you had to liquidate your collection, what is the last product on the shelf you would want to sell? It would be my binder of 1994 Flair Ultra X-Men, the base set, plus all the chase sets. I put that together in the 5th grade, trading with friends at school. It's very dear to me. And when I open that binder and I flip through the pages, my brain has these recollections of images and sounds and smells and things from that time, and it's this weird experience. I'm sure there's some kind of I'm sure like neurologists have a name for that phenomenon, but I experience those memories when I look through it, and that would be the very last thing I would ever get rid of. Bruce Hawthorne, what do you see as the biggest opportunity in MTG right now, or in the future, or just in life in general? My answer is everything. All TCG products do pretty good in the long run. You just have to be patient. The biggest opportunity is patience itself. And so if you are a calm, unemotional investor and you will just buy a little bit of everything, you will do amazing. And I'm going to have a video coming out like plus or minus 4 or 5 days of this video about Pokemon investing over the last 12 years, what the returns of that look like. It's unbelievable. I mean, if you made the worst case assumptions, you still beat the stock market over the last 12 years. So, the opportunity is everywhere. Magic is not going anywhere. Pokemon is not going anywhere. And so simply being patient and buying a little bit of everything, you will do amazing. My second answer to that question is, people keep creating more people. Most of the world is still not in the middle class, and birth rates do not slow until you get to the middle class. So the population of humans on the earth is going to continue expanding for, I think, at least another 50 years. That means markets will continue to grow. Opportunity will be there for business and economic expansion and everything. So just patience. That's the biggest thing. And it's the hardest thing to learn. That's the most unfortunate. We all want to get rich quick. It's easy to get rich slow. Just do it slowly and be patient. But we don't want to do that. And so, often people miss out on becoming rich because they gamble on stupid stuff instead of being patient. Wesley McLeod, what is your favorite moment or memory with MTG? So it was playing at the book browser in Houston on Friday night, and the first time back, it would have been 97, 98 maybe. The first time I lost to a Chronotog Stasis deck, and you're playing and they throw out a Stasis, and you think, oh well, I'll just run through my deck, pulling out lands, casting creatures, and attacking once with each, and I'll win. And then they skip all the rest of their turns, and you slowly kind of realize that you're screwed and you're going to lose. And it was really kind of this transformative moment where I realized, wow, control decks are pretty good. And that just playing creature decks or burn decks probably wasn't an optimal strategy. He also asked, as a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? I wanted to be a trash man because they got to ride on the back of the truck. If you could have one of your current future projects reach wide success, what would you choose? I don't want to say I'm not ambitious. I am ambitious, and I have dreams for the future that I want to accomplish. But I don't tie a lot of my future potential happiness into certain goals that might not be achieved. I would think if Final Trade, the YouTube channel, one day reaches 10,000 subscribers, it would be fully grown because this is such a niche topic and the way I present it just does not lend itself to huge audiences. You know, Rudy at Alpha Investments, he's much more charismatic, he's much more emotional, he's much more of a showman than I am. And so that brings in a lot of subscribers that probably would not be interested in my delivery method. And so at 10,000, I would say that was wide success. I'd like to have a card store, and you know, I have a lot of ideas about how that kind of business would work, how it would integrate in with patron programs and selling and everything else. And the reality is, I'm a very content person. You know, we kind of have this weird problem in society where everybody loves to post on social media how they're doing something awesome right now. And we all kind of get this skewed idea that everyone else is hyper happy all the time. And then we start to feel that we need to be that way too. But the reality is humans have evolved to be content, not to constantly be ecstatic. And so, you know, 10,000 subscribers and a card store and just being content day to day, I would say that would be wide success. And I'd be a very happy person. I mean, I'm already a happy person. Alpine Zissou asks, what degree do you have? I have degrees in engineering and physics. How did you enjoy to learn tax accounting in MATLAB? Well, my engineering job required that I learn MATLAB. It's a nice tool. It's basically pretty good at almost everything, so it doesn't really excel in anything in terms of programming languages. It's just kind of pretty good at everything, except for runtime execution speed. It's pretty bad at that. How did I enjoy to learn tax accounting? You know, I just picked it up over time. My dad was an accountant and a small businessman, and accounting satisfies my engineer brain. And what I mean by that is that if you do it correctly, everything balances on both sides, and you can tell that you've done it right because, you know, the left side and the right side of the ledger is all summed to zero. What is your vision for a physical LGS? So my idea would be to have a small card store, sell some small amount of singles in the store because that brings people in, host events. You know, I would think I'd want to be open like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday afternoon and be closed Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Do the normal Friday night magic, do a Saturday night thing. And basically the idea would be that the physical store would break even. And then you would make your money on online sales, on patron sales, things like that. And so the physical store would give you distributor access, and you would hope to do enough business in it to simply break even on the overhead costs of a physical store. Alpine goes on to ask, do you just want to sling boxes from the post office? I think that's an inevitable part of being in this business. You must do that. What do you predict will be your final trade? My final trade will be very quietly passing several pallets of sealed product to my children at zero basis cost under the table. I have a friend who is a old school diamond dealer, and he told me stories once of how wealthy people will buy diamonds from dealers, quietly hand them to their children, who will then later sell them and recoup the costs. And basically there's this whole, like, I don't want to call it a black market, but it's this whole cottage industry of doing that in order to pass off money, or, you know, give your kids an inheritance tax-free under the table. David S. says, what is your most favorite TCG to play personally? Magic in the pre-modern format. I have a bunch of old videos on this channel that I made in 2021 about pre-modern Magic topics, decks, cards, things like that. It's the old borders. It was a simpler game back then. The power curve was shallower, and it's what I enjoy the most. I own probably about 20 pre-modern decks. Bruce Hawthorne says, where does your interest in tracking sales and prices of products originate from? Do you have other metrics you like to look at? So the interest is, if you want to try to learn how the markets work, you need historical data to learn from. So, you know, it's difficult to come up with theories of markets that are back testable that then also work in the future. but you can get general ideas. So, technical analysis is garbage. It's like throwing bones, but in terms of just trying to identify trends, the way things work, what has been happening, things like that, you can start over time to get a feel for how markets work. But specific insights and predicting numbers down to the date, that's not a thing. But you can get general knowledge and you can get feelings about how markets are working. And I think that's the benefit of it. That's why I do it. Do you have other metrics you'd like to look at? I will look at any metric to try to evaluate if it's potentially a good metric. William Rankin, what D&D characters have you played and which was your favorite? So I have played fighters and paladins back when I used to play 3.5 edition, and in 5th edition I've only DM'd. Which was your favorite to play? Paladin, of course. Paladins are, I just love paladins. Nick Macedo, curious if you have backed up any of the upcoming Kickstarter TCGs and what your thoughts are on them, specifically Sorcery and Cryptic. Yes, I backed Sorcery. I bought 2 booster boxes and I bought the 4 pre-constructed decks. And so I think that was probably, like $400. Basically, I want the decks to play with because it looks like a neat game. I always like the games where you use your cards to construct a physical map to play on. I think that's an underutilized idea in game design. Otherwise, the 2 boxes I bought, those are purely speculative. I'll hold them for many years and then I'll probably sell them or I'll open them on a video or something. I think most of the games are going to fail. I think Rudy's warnings that most of those Kickstarter games are going to fail, I think he's absolutely right. You look back at all the games, Legend of the Five Rings, even though it was a successful game for several years, and there was a Mech Warrior game back in the late 90s, there was the Alien Predator game. There's so many games from that era that failed, and how many made it through? A couple. Magic, Pokemon, a few others over the last 20 years have gained enough traction to stay alive. The vast majority fail, and especially when you talk about Kickstarter, I mean, the threshold to start a Kickstarter campaign is much lower than the old threshold of just starting a TCG. And so it means that even less prepared people will be doing it, and the odds of failure are much higher. So Sorcery looked cool because of the artwork, because, they look like they had a tiny chance of making it. Will they make it long term? Odds are against them. But I like the idea that I could get the pre-constructed decks and just play with those, and maybe those 2 booster boxes will sink to near zero and really have no value for decades. Okay, there's risk in every course of action. Johan Witt asks, how do you budget out your sealed product purchases? So for Final Trade, every month I have a set amount of money that I transfer from my personal banking accounts into the Final Trade bank accounts, and then I budget for every expansion. If it's Pokemon, I try to buy a case of booster boxes and one of those build and battle 10 box displays. If it's Magic, I try to buy a case of collector boxes and a case of set boxes. Unless it's a set that doesn't have set boxes, then I buy draft boxes. And so I just set that wide thin net. I cast it. I buy a little bit of everything because, again, almost everything does really well long term in this kind of space. TTB Money says, that guy over at Alpha Investments thinks Throne of Eldraine collector boxes are $1,000 boxes. Do you agree? So I think Rudy said that recently, and I think Rudy was actually just talking about the draft boxes of Throne of Eldraine were $1,000 boxes. Yeah, I agree, but I think it's somewhat of a unhelpful estimation. And what I mean by that is Rudy will say these things like, this is a $1,000 box. Well, yeah, I mean, Dragon's Maze will be $1,000 eventually. It's a matter of time scale. And I think what Rudy really meant was Throne of Eldraine will outpace other sets of similar time period in terms of appreciation. And I think, sure, I mean, it seems like it was well received. It is outpacing things like Ikoria and Core 21 and Theros Beyond Death that came out in the same time period. And so, yeah, it seems like it'll do better. Yeah, it'll eventually be $1,000. So, I don't like to make specific predictions about where box prices will go. On the long timeline, they nearly all go up. I'm bad, like really bad, asks. Least favorite food, carrots. Yeah, they're just awful. And my mom had this insane fascination when I was a kid with carrot juice. Like, she thought it was a health food. It's really an overly sugary, like, confection drink that's terrible for your health. But, yeah, carrots, they're just awful. Chris Tuckwell, as you seem to have a financial head on your shoulders, could you go through what Hasbro's financial position is and how the annual financial reports compare in the last year or two, and what do you think it means for WotC and Magic? When I read this question, I thought, why haven't I been looking at Hasbro's quarterly reports? Because all throughout my professional career, whatever company I've been working for, I always follow their quarterly results, listen to the quarterly conference calls, and you can learn a lot about a company, its upper management, what their vision for the future is, and how they expect to get there from the quarterly calls. And I kind of was disappointed in myself when I read the question, because it was like, why haven't I been doing that with Hasbro? Because there's probably a small amount of actionable information that would come out of there. So I'm going to start doing that. I'll probably go back and listen to their conference calls for the last like 3 or 4 quarters, and then I'll listen to them going forward, and then maybe I'll just make a video talking about it each quarter. Mazo49 says, I'm from Brazil and I follow the channel. Is there any box you wouldn't mind buying in another language? Yeah, so other language products are always an interesting topic. Generally, I don't like them because there's low volume, meaning there's not much of a market for them, fewer of them get printed, and the demand is lower. And so it's just harder to move them. It's harder to do proper price discovery because there's fewer sales that happen in foreign language product. But there are a couple of exceptions to that. Sometimes some Japanese product is probably worth investing in. And especially if it's like the Japanese language Pokemon stuff, because the way I understand it is they release Pokemon sets in Japan, and they are Japanese language sets, and then they will take like 2 of those sets and they'll select cards out of both of them, translate them to English, and those become the English sets. It's something weird like that. And so there are cards in Japanese language Pokemon that never get printed in English. And I think there's opportunity there. Now, I would not go really deep into those. I would definitely just buy a little bit at first, follow it for a couple years and figure out what it looks like before you go too deep into those kind of investments. I know that Strixhaven, the Japanese language set boxes, had the Japanese mystical archives in them, where the English language boxes only had the Japanese language mystical archives in the collector boxes. So rewind that if you need to hear that again. So there are small opportunities like that. The last opportunity, I would say, is a potential one for the future, and we saw WotC kind of try to do it. It was the box toppers for Streets of New Capenna, and nobody remembers that those had box toppers because everybody stopped opening the set like almost immediately. But the Streets of New Capenna box toppers, because the set had this like 1930s Art Deco theme, the foreign language box toppers had alternate art that emphasized that respective language's home country's culture during the 1920s and 30s. And so I think there's potential there to have like different art in foreign language sets that could make them investable on a very small basis. But in broad terms, I would say no, you always want to stick to English because, 200-300 years from now, the entire world will be speaking English and a lot of languages will be unused. That's where we're going in the long term. And, we're already significantly towards that now. So I mostly stick to English, but I think there are a few places to cherry pick to see some good returns from foreign language products, but you have to be very careful. Wesley McLeod again asks, who are 3 YouTube creators outside of Magic whose content you most enjoy? So the first would be Tick History. It's just T-I-K History. He's a British guy who does a bunch of basically history that is focused around economics. and of course you can imagine I like that, but he does mostly World War II history from the perspective of an economist. And he challenges a lot of the popular narratives of World War II type of stuff, and he goes back to the original sources. He goes back to the people who wrote memoirs at the time. He goes back to original records, and then he compares them across many different sources to challenge what we thought we knew about World War II history. And it's very fascinating because he's going back to the original sources, and he's basically coming at it from the standpoint of an economist. And it's just really fascinating, some of the stuff that he comes across. He asked for 3 YouTube creators outside of Magic content that I most enjoy. Of course, Forgotten Weapons is one I've been following for, it seems like 10 years now. I mean, he was under 100,000 views when I first discovered him. He's basically a historian and engineer who goes around the world finding old firearms and talking about the history and operation of them. It's really interesting. And the third one outside of Magic that I really love, let me think if I can come up with another one on the spot. He says, do you have a sleeper creator who is underappreciated? I have 2. One is this guy named Hearthstone. He's a former professional StarCraft 2 player who casts StarCraft 2 games now. He has 2 channels. One is called Hearthstone, where he puts his own games, but the better one is called Hearthstone Casts. It's just casting StarCraft 2 games, but he has an encyclopedic knowledge of the game and very, very deep technical knowledge. And just the way that he casts them is so entertaining. The other channel I would recommend for everyone, if you like my content, it's Asianometry, like Asian and Ometry? Asianometry. He's a, I think, Taiwanese American guy, and he posts videos like twice a week, incredibly well researched videos on this intersection of business, economics, and history relating to typically Asian topics. And so it's just, he only has like 200,000 subscribers, and it's like, how does he have so few? His content is so good, so well researched, and he posts so much of it. So Asianometry and Hearthstone Cast are the 2 I think are underappreciated. And Tick History and Forgotten Weapons, I think, are 2 of my 3 favorites. You know, beyond those, there's just a lot of channels that I enjoy watching that are outside of the Magic space. So it's hard to come up with a third that would be really rise above the rest. Wesley McLeod again asks, some more personal questions. Favorite band you never saw? You know, I would say Offspring, Audio Slave, and Perfect Circle are 3 that I never saw in person, but were some of my favorite bands and still are. Favorite alcoholic beverage? Zafra 21-year Panamanian rum. It's weird because for many years now you've been able to buy a 750 milliliter bottle for $40 to $50. So when I just want a little bit of liquor to drink, that's what I like. Favorite dessert? Lemon bars. I had the luck of marrying a woman whose mother taught her how to bake and was herself a very competent baker. And so one time early in our marriage, my wife said, here's some lemon bars. And I said, can you double the filling? And so she iterated on it a couple days later. She doubled the amount of filling on top of the same amount of crust. And then I said, now can you double the amount of lemon in them? So she doubled the lemon, and it's the perfect lemon bar recipe, and it is my favorite dessert. Favorite childhood memory? You know, this is interesting, and it comes back to where I'm a very content and happy person. Like I say sometimes, the future is always bullish. And I feel like life gets better and better as time goes on. You know, you become an adult and it gets better. You have a career and you become wealthier and life gets better. You get married and life gets better. You have kids and life gets better. And so I feel like probably my greatest memory of childhood is then like whatever the last day of childhood was, because I'm forever optimistic, and I feel like as your life goes on, it just gets better and better continuously. And this goes along with my idea that, you know, markets will continue to expand, that the opportunity is always there. And so, sorry, I can't come up with like a specific memory of childhood that's like, this is a great time that I had this one day. But I think that's because I'm so optimistic about the future, no matter what. And finally, Bram K. He says, my first sealed investment was an overpriced double feature booster box for $220 lol. That's him, LowlyNet himself. I am not LowlyNet, him. Everyone hates it. Prices are going down and I'm going to buy more of them. Do you think this set is undervalued at 120 or 140 sealed? Foil prices for singles are pretty high. Yeah, so double feature is just the most hilarious product. It was just this lazy, stupid, half-ass attempt by WotC to pump out an extra product to suck some more money in from the distribution and retail network. And it's absolutely hated. It's ridiculous, lazy, stupid product. But in years to come, it's going to do great. And that's the hilarious part of it, because we look at it now and we just despise it. And yeah, the prices have come down a lot. It was a WPN exclusive, and the wholesale price, I forget, some guy who operates a WPN store told me in the comments before, but it was like the wholesale price is something like $160, I don't know. Just preposterously high. And it was only, I think, 24 packs to a box instead of 36, and they sold it at this premium price, and it was a garbage product. But you look at it, it's two standard sets mashed together with a lazy black and white filter on top, but it's got this cool theming because it's Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow together, and then they call it double feature, and it's in black and white. It's got the coolest theming, and I imagine that for years to come, card stores will bust out a box of that close to Halloween and do a draft tournament of double feature. I think that's where a lot of those boxes are going to end up in the future. And the demand for it, I think, will go up over time because it's such a unique and weird product. The fact that it was stupid and lazy will be forgotten, and its uniqueness will override that in the future. Yeah, if you can buy them at 120, 140, 160, I think they're around 160 today. Yeah, I think those prices are fine. I eventually would like to buy some. I have not yet, but I would like to get 2-3 boxes of it for the future. And I think it'll do great. The fact that you paid $220 in the past, well, you know, that happens. I paid $230 for Baldur's Gate collector boxes, and they're like $140 today. So, you know, I'm way underwater on that. But as he says, he plans to buy more of them. That's the way to do it. You average down, and, you know, we all have to commit to making a purchase at some point. We don't know what the future will hold. We don't know if the product will continue going down. We don't know if it'll spike up and we'll look like geniuses. But you have to commit to actually buying something at some point. And that's just the reality of it. So sometimes you buy and the price goes down. But again, these are TCG products. They all do pretty well in the long run. So that was all the questions for the 1K Q&A. Thank you to everyone who got me here. Thank you for all your help. I feel like I don't do nearly enough to deserve the support you give me. I hope that one day I can do enough. Thank you to all my wonderful patrons. I cannot believe there are 25 people who would pay to talk to me. It's boggles my mind. And the kind of conversation that we have over there, mostly in private messages, it's just unbelievable, the ideas you guys have and the kind of things that we stumble upon and that we think up over there in those conversations. So I appreciate that. I appreciate all your views. Every time you tell someone about the channel and help it grow, I appreciate that. And, you know, I'm having a blast doing this. I love making these videos. I love talking about these things. And mostly, I feel that I'm the most privileged one here because I get input from all of you guys telling me your great ideas and your questions that get me thinking about things and your corrections when you tell me, hey, Craig, you screwed this thing up. But, you know, I feel like I've grown so much from this and I'm so excited for the future. So thanks a lot, everyone. You know, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Keep joining me on Final Trade, and thanks for everything, guys. Join the Patreon.